I thought the worst moment of my life was the day I left this land. Now, standing here, facing the unbelievable, I realized the real tragedy had been the 30 years I spent away from it, living a marriage built on a foundation of dust and secrets. The key to the old iron gate, still heavy in my palm, was meaningless. The chain securing the entrance to the old Mitchell ranch was rusted through. Certainly, but the main barrier wasn't the lock. It was the sheer, paralyzing shock of the thriving ecosystem on the other side. It should be derelict. Grant? I murmured, my voice a dry whisper against the Montana wind. The listing agent confirmed it was abandoned. We should just be taking photos for the sale. Grant. My eldest son, ever the pragmatic financier, emerged from his black SUV, phone already glued to his ear, his Italian leather shoes crunching the fresh gravel. Mom, please. This is simply a bureaucratic oversight. Some squatter must have broken the lock. The mineral rights alone are worth at least $25 million. $25 million. We cannot risk that deal because of sentimentality. Sentimentality. That's what they called my trauma. My fear, my avoidance. My entire life since we, William and I, left this place after the unspeakable loss of our 10-year-old son Benjamin, who we all just called Ben. But this wasn't mere squatting. The half-mile dirt road leading to the house wasn't overgrown. It was freshly graded. The perimeter fence, which I distinctly remembered sagging with neglect, was meticulously repaired. And the air, instead of the heavy silence of a graveyard I expected, was alive with sound, the distant thrum of heavy machinery, the faint melodic ring of a blacksmith's hammer, and, most incredibly, children's laughter. My heart hammered a desperate rhythm against my ribs. I felt a wave of nausea so profound it threatened to buckle my knees. William, my late husband, my rock, my beloved physician who died 6 months ago, convinced I was too fragile to handle the memories of this place, had promised me this land was forgotten. A necessary wound cauterized for my peace of mind. We need to call the sheriff, Mom, Grant insisted, finally hanging up, his face rigid with professional alarm. This is trespassing on a massive scale. As we rounded the final bend, the full panorama of the deception unfolded, and I felt the air tear from my lungs. It wasn't just the main ranch house, now painted a welcoming pale yellow, that stood in pristine condition. Below, spread across the valley where only weeds and ghosts should have resided, was a vibrant, fully functional settlement. There were at least a dozen newly built log cabins, a towering functional windmill, a massive barn converted into a communal dining hall, and a greenhouse that shimmered like glass under the wide-open Montana sky. And people. So many people. Adults moving with purpose, children playing a fierce game of tag near a freshly tended vegetable patch. A woman, tall and stately with silver braids woven into her hair, emerged from the main house. She carried a polished mahogany cane, but her gait was steady and purposeful. As she approached, her eyes, clear, intelligent, and startlingly direct, met mine. There was no surprise in her gaze, only a profound, almost weary anticipation. "Genevieve Sinclair?" she asked, her voice a deep alto, utterly calm. "Yes," I managed, clutching Grant's arm. "Who are you? What is this place?" "This land belongs to the Sinclair family estate." The woman, an absolute stranger, allowed herself a small, tragic smile. "My name is Alara, and this, Mrs. Sinclair, is the Stone Creek Sanctuary. Your husband's work, his legacy, his secret for the last 30 years. The blood rushed from my head. 30 years. All those medical conferences in Portland, the fishing trips, the college reunions, the weekends where I urged him to go, telling him he needed a break from me and my endless grief. They were all lies. They were all spent here." "That's impossible," Grant spat out, stepping aggressively between us. My father was a respected Denver physician. He didn't run a commune in Montana. "This is ridiculous. You need to vacate this property immediately. We have a pending offer for $25 million. $25 million. Alara's gaze didn't waver from mine, dismissing Grant as a minor distraction. William was here for at least 4 days, sometimes 5, every single month. since the spring following your son Ben's accident. He never sold the land, Genevieve. He invested everything he had left into it. He created a home for veterans, for families starting over, for those who had nowhere else to go. All in Ben's name. The raw, violent emotion of the betrayal choked me. It wasn't just the money or the time or the deception. It was the knowledge that while I was freezing Ben's memory in a mausoleum of silence and sorrow in Denver, William was actively building a living, breathing memorial here. A world where Ben's ghost was a foundation, not an anchor. He lied to me, I whispered, the words scratching my throat raw. He let me live with the weight of that loss, thinking he was beside me, but he was here, building a second life, a second family. He built it for you. Mrs. Sinclair, Alara corrected, her hand gripping her cane. He just didn't think you could ever bear to look at it. He was a deeply tormented man, but his dedication was absolute. Before I could process the words, a small, bustling figure darted from the main house, his face alight with excitement. He was a young man, perhaps in his mid-20s, wearing a faded denim jacket and a familiar, slightly ridiculous fishing hat. The very hat William used to wear on those supposed fishing trips. Alara. Alara, the new owner is here, he exclaimed, his voice slightly slurred, confirming what I instantly recognized. He had Down syndrome. He stopped abruptly when he saw me, his enthusiastic smile dimming into shy curiosity. Hello? He said softly, tipping William's hat. I'm Sam. I work with the horses. Are you Ben's mom? William told me all about Ben, that name. That beautiful broken name, spoken by a stranger on this forbidden ground. I felt my carefully constructed wall of 30 years crumble, leaving me exposed to a pain far sharper than the initial grief. Grant looked horrified, stepping forward to pull me away, but I shook him off. I needed to see more. I needed to know every single terrible, beautiful detail of my husband's secret life. Sam's innocent recognition, "Are you Ben's mom?" was a razor-sharp cut through the layers of my denial. In Denver, I was Genevieve Sinclair, retired history teacher, grieving widow. Here, I was instantly, violently rechristened. Ben's mom. The title William had silently preserved. Grant, my ever-vigilant protector of wealth and propriety, grabbed my elbow. Mom, let's get you back to the car. This is clearly a case of coordinated squatting and potential exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The fishing hat alone is evidence. Stop, I ordered, my voice surprisingly steady despite the roaring chaos inside me. I was 58 years old, and for the first time in 3 decades, I felt like I was actually standing somewhere, not floating in a vacuum of sorrow. Alara, I need to see the proof. I need to see the documentation. All of it, Alara nodded, her expression softening infinitesimally. William didn't leave anything to chance, Genevieve. He documented everything. Come inside. His office is exactly as he left it. It was his base, his refuge. As we walked toward the ranch house, which looked hauntingly familiar yet completely renovated, I noticed a change in the environment. Grant was already pacing outside, making furious calls, his back rigid with righteous indignation. But as we passed the stables, I heard a quiet, almost tentative voice. It was Reese, my youngest, my sensitive soul, whom I'd arranged to meet here later that afternoon. He was kneeling in the dirt outside a small paddock, gently rubbing the muzzle of a large, skittish mare. Reese was my mirror, the one who always carried William's quiet sadness, the one who struggled most with the structured life we'd built in Denver. He had battled depression and a constant, indefinable restlessness since his childhood. He'd never had a talent for finance or corporate law, always preferring the quiet dignity of animals. She's called Echo, a young woman with kind eyes and calloused hands explained to Reese. She's a rescue, doesn't trust anyone. Don't push her. She's not scared of me, Reese murmured, his eyes locked on the horse. She's just tired of fighting. She needs to know she can drop the armor. I stopped to watch, a prickling sensation rising behind my eyes. This was the most peace I had seen in Reese's face in 15 years. William had once told me that Reese had a way with animals, that he could whisper to them. a fragile memory I'd dismissed as a loving father's exaggeration. But here the skill was undeniable. "William always believed Reese belonged here," Alara whispered beside me, her voice cutting through my thoughts. "He said your youngest son had Ben's gentleness, but Ben's struggle for stability. He hoped this place could ground him." I stumbled slightly, caught between the beauty of Reese's presence and the fury of the secret. Inside the house, the air was warm and smelled faintly of wood smoke and old leather. Alara led us to a small room off the main living area. His office. It was a stark, almost monastic space. A heavy oak desk, a worn leather chair, and a single, breathtaking photograph on the wall. Ben, age 8, fishing on the dock that no longer existed. He was wearing the silly hat Sam now wore. Alara opened a hidden wall safe behind a bookcase and retrieved a sturdy metal box and a heavy, leather-bound volume. "The ledger," she said, placing the book on the desk. William called it the Book of Days. He meticulously recorded every month's activities, every resident, every expense. And this, she tapped the metal box, is his final confession. Before I could open the box, Alara gestured to a large, framed map on the wall. It wasn't the ranch map. It was a topographical survey of the entire valley. Hand-drawn red circles marked dozens of locations. William didn't just run a shelter, Genevieve. He oversaw the healing of the land, too. The toxic runoff from the old logging operation, the soil depletion. He worked with experts to restore it. This entire valley is a testament to his guilt, yes, but also his unrelenting dedication. My eyes fell upon a specific, circled point near the lake. Ben's bench. He couldn't leave. Not physically and not financially, Alara continued. The mining company's original offer 30 years ago after the tragedy was what allowed us to leave quickly. But William never truly left. He poured that money back into acquiring the surrounding acreage, creating the buffer zone, establishing the trust. The trust, I repeated, the word sounding hollow. Yes, legally, the Stone Creek Sanctuary Trust owns the ranch now. William established it 15 years ago. It's ironclad, designed to survive him, and designed to survive any attempt by outsiders to profit from the mineral rights. He used the complexity of his medical and investment portfolios to make it virtually untraceable until his death. I felt a surge of professional fury on behalf of my daughter, Audrey, the corporate lawyer. William had intentionally used his intellect not to protect his family's comfort, but to protect his secret project from his family's comfort. I reached for the metal box. What did he leave inside? A video, a letter to you, and his legacy proposals for each of your children, Alara explained. He wanted you to understand why. But first, before you open it, let me ask you. After 30 years of thinking you knew him completely, did you ever wonder if he was carrying something too heavy for one man alone? I stared at the box. My husband, the man who held my hand every night, who comforted me through my endless nightmares, who built a wall of silence around our grief to protect me. He had used that same silence to build an entire civilization 1,000 miles away. He was always the strong one, I whispered, the irony like bitter bile. I never saw him falter. Not once. Then you never looked past the surface, Genevieve. Because the secret was not just what he built. The secret was what he knew about that day. The weight of Alara's words, the secret was what he knew about that day, pressed down on me, making the air thick and unbreathable. It was a psychological punch that rendered all talk of trusts, money, and land sales irrelevant. Yet the outside world, embodied by my children, was already converging on the secret. Grant returned, bringing Audrey, my high-powered corporate attorney daughter, with him. Audrey emerged from her pristine sedan, looking like she had stepped off the cover of a major business magazine, sharp, impeccably dressed, and radiating controlled intensity. This is madness. Mother, Audrey declared, not as a question but as a final legal assessment. Grant called my firm. We're dealing with a complex corporate fraud case here. William diverted significant capital. We need immediate access to those documents. They're right here, I said, my hand resting on the metal box. But you'll read them after me. I want to see the whole tapestry before you start dissecting the threads. Audrey's husband, Greg, the kind, quiet man who was dealing with his own career setback, cleared his throat. Mrs. Sinclair, with all due respect, my firm is representing the mineral company. We need an answer on the extension by the end of the week. That $25 million offer is contingent on a quick decision. They have other sites. The deadline. The harsh practical reality of $25 million. $25 million. Clashing with the slow, painful unfolding of my husband's 30-year confession. The urgency was designed to pressure me, to pull me back to the world of black and white ledgers and away from the gray area of William's tormented soul. Then let them pursue those options. Greg, I heard myself say, the unexpected clarity of the refusal startling me. It was a defiance born not of anger at William, but of a fierce, protective instinct toward this strange, fragile community he had built. This land was Ben's playground. It was William's sanctuary. And now, it is home to dozens of people who have nowhere else to go. I will not rush a decision that might destroy that. Not yet. Audrey looked genuinely stunned. Exchanging a glance with Greg that clearly conveyed, "She's compromised," Alara stepped forward, holding the heavy leather ledger, the Book of Days. William left meticulous records, Audrey. Not just expenses, but a registry of every soul who found refuge here. He did this because he believed this place was a greater asset than any amount of money. He called it the impossible mathematics of grace. And what about us? Grant interjected, his voice tight with controlled rage. We struggled. Audrey and Greg had crushing medical debt after Greg's layoff. Reese was in and out of 3 different rehab facilities, costing us a fortune. I needed bridge loans for my business expansion. And all the while, William was sitting on a $25 million ticking clock and diverting funds to this secret society. We were comfortable, Grant, I corrected, my voice soft but firm. We were privileged. These people, I gestured toward the main house where I could see Sam patiently leading Reese toward the stables, had nothing. William extended his responsibility beyond blood. And perhaps that is the most valuable thing he could have taught us. I turned back to Alara. Before I can read the final confession, I need to understand his daily process. I need to read the Book of Days. When did he write it? What did he document? Alara opened the ledger. The paper was yellowed, the script William's familiar, precise physician's hand. He wrote the summary entry after every visit. He called it the Daily Prayer of Action. The first entry is dated 3 weeks after you left for Denver. I scanned the first entry. It was painfully simple, lacking the drama I craved, but filled with a quiet despair that punched me harder than any revelation of millions of dollars. Entry, May the 17th. Year 1, task. Repaired the split rail fence near the creek bed. Fixed the broken hinge on the barn door. Made an offer to Mr. Gregory Hayes, a former Marine veteran suffering from severe PTSD, to stay and help with manual labor in exchange for sanctuary. Observation. Hayes has the same hollow look I see in the mirror. He understands that some wounds only heal when you stop running from the site of the injury. Cost. $437 for lumber. Self-correction, called Genevieve. Lied about being at a medical conference in Portland. Her voice sounded lighter than it has in months. I cannot bear to reopen the wound. The secret must remain the suture. Tears, hot and sudden, spilled onto the worn leather. The suture. He thought the secret was binding us, protecting me. In reality, it was severing us, piece by painful piece, for 30 long years. He used his visits here as his own therapeutic retreat, Alara explained gently. He couldn't mourn Ben with you, because he was afraid to confess his own guilt. So he mourned here, through action, through service, and through these pages. I closed the Book of Days, the weight of the book now feeling like the weight of his heart. I need to go to the lake now, I announced. The memorial bench. My children exchanged worried glances. The lake was the epicenter of our family's destruction. the place we had all fled from. "I'll go with you, Mom," Reese offered quietly, stepping away from the stables, his hands now smelling faintly of horse and earth. He hadn't judged William. He hadn't mentioned the money. He had simply found his place. "No, Reese," I said, gripping the book. "This journey, this final terrifying confrontation with the ghost of my marriage, must be mine alone." I took the metal box and the leather-bound ledger and started walking toward the water, toward the place where my life, and William's secret life, had begun and ended. The path to the lake was the same, the scent of pine needles, the soft yielding soil, but the end point was drastically changed. Where there was once only the dilapidated half-submerged dock where Ben's life ended, now stood a beautifully crafted stone bench. It faced the water, positioned perfectly to catch the setting sun. Engraved on the backrest, simple and heartbreaking, were 3 words: "For our Benjamin." I didn't collapse. I didn't scream. I simply sat down, the cold stone seeping into my core, and placed the metal box beside me. I was ready to face the music after 30 years of self-imposed deafness. I opened the box. Inside, stacked and tied neatly with faded ribbon, were hundreds of letters. Not just 1 or 2, but bundles upon bundles, labeled meticulously by year. A letter for nearly every month of William's secret existence. He hadn't just been here. He had been writing. 360 letters, I whispered. The sheer volume of physical testament to his dedication to the lie. I found the earliest bundle, labeled Year 1, The Fall. With trembling, almost reverent fingers, I pulled out the first envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable, his elegant, familiar scrawl, addressed simply, "To Genevieve. When you're ready to know." I broke the seal. The paper was slightly yellowed, the words rushed and desperate. "My dearest Genevieve, I'm writing this from the small office above the new tack room. I told you I was in Portland for the medical ethics conference. Please, my love, forgive the immediate deception, but I cannot yet bear to tell you the truth. I couldn't sell this place. I simply couldn't do it. When we left, I thought burning the bridge was the only way for you to heal. But coming back, just 3 weeks later, I realized the bridge was the only thing holding me up. The lake haunts me as it haunts you, yes. But facing it, repairing the old dock, it brings a strange, quiet peace that utterly eludes me in Denver. Today, I didn't just mend the fence. I cleared the path to the lower meadow, the one where Ben insisted on flying his terrible, lopsided kite. They were small, mundane acts of manual labor, but they felt like prayer. They felt like a penance I could actually pay. I found a man, a former Marine named Gregory Hayes, sleeping in the abandoned barn. Instead of calling the authorities, I invited him to stay and help with repairs. He has the same hollow, haunted look we carry, Genevieve. The look of someone who has lost an irreplaceable part of their soul. Maybe that's why I let him stay. Because he understands that some wounds never fully close. They just become part of who you are. I want to tell you about this place, about how the quiet here makes me feel both guilty and strangely whole. But when I called home tonight, and you described the joy of your first week back teaching, I couldn't bear to risk shattering the fragile peace you've begun to find. So I carry this secret for now. It is a small, cold solace that helps me breathe when the grief threatens to suffocate me entirely. Perhaps someday we can share it. Until then, know that in this very place where we lost our son, I am keeping his memory alive in the only way I know how, by helping others who are lost themselves. He will not have died in vain, Genevieve. I swear it. All my love, William. I finished reading, the paper shaking so violently it almost tore. I didn't sob. I felt a terrible, magnificent clarity. This wasn't the cynical, heartless deception Grant had imagined. This was a survival mechanism fueled by agonizing guilt and an insurmountable need for redemption. The distance he created wasn't about selfishness. It was about self-punishment and a desperate act of love aimed at both me and the memory of our son. I looked up. The sky was turning a magnificent shade of deep purple and gold. I heard footsteps behind me. It was Reese. He sat down quietly on the path behind the bench, respecting the space. He didn't ask what the letter said. "He taught Sam how to fish from this bench," Reese said softly, nodding toward the water. "Alara told me. He taught 47 kids to swim in that lake. He made sure the tragedy of one boy was the salvation of dozens of others." The raw mathematics hit me. William had feared facing the place of Ben's death, yet he transformed it into a center for water safety. The thing that took our son became the thing that saved others. The impossibility of the irony was staggering. Why didn't he ever tell me he knew I was running away? I asked Reese, not expecting an answer from him, but from the universe. "Because, Mom," Reese replied, his voice rough with sudden, uncharacteristic insight. "He was running too. You ran from the location. He ran from the truth. What truth, Reese? What could be worse than what we already endured?" "The one Alara hinted at," he said, standing up and looking down at the lake. "The secret he carried that made him build all of this. It's on the video, isn't it? The one in the box. I think you need to watch it before you make any decisions about $25 million, $25 million, and whether we sell this land or not." He walked away, leaving me alone with the metal box, the letters, and the terrifying knowledge that the full extent of my husband's tragedy, and my own, was still waiting inside the final confession. I waited until the last sliver of sunlight had vanished behind the jagged peaks of the mountains before pressing play. The chill of the night air matched the deep, agonizing fear in my soul. I was on the brink of discovering the truth that had secretly shaped 30 years of my life. The video quality was poor, filmed months ago, judging by the weary slump of William's shoulders and the unnatural pallor of his skin. He looked nothing like the strong, controlled man who had died in his sleep. This was a ghost of a man already halfway across the veil. "Genevieve," he began, his voice a low, painful rasp. "If you are watching this, I have failed to protect you from the truth. But perhaps I have succeeded in giving you the tools to finally heal." He paused, visibly gathering his strength, and then delivered the blow that shattered the last shards of my sanity. The day Ben died. The responsibility, the fault was mine. Not yours, my love. Never yours. I let you carry that weight for 30 years. And I am eternally sorry for the cruelty of that silence. My hand flew to my mouth, muffling a cry that felt 30 years overdue. He continued. His eyes, even on the screen, fixed on mine with an unbearable intensity. "You were in the kitchen, preparing the batter for his birthday cake. You thought he was with me. I was in the workshop, fixing the clutch on the old tractor. Ben came to me holding his new fishing rod. He asked if he could go to the dock and cast a few lines. I looked at the broken-down tractor, felt the impatience, and told him yes. I told him to stay on the dock, and I promised to join him in 10 minutes, once the repair was finished. He took a ragged, shuddering breath, the sound magnified by the weak microphone. I got pulled into the engine. 10 minutes turned into 20, then 45. When I finally emerged, the rod was lying on the dock, the line drifting in the water. I ran to the house, thinking he'd come inside, found you in the kitchen, and saw the terror in your eyes when I asked where he was. We were both wrong, Genevieve, but I was the one who gave him permission. I was the one who broke the promise. I was the one who was distracted by a piece of metal while our son, our magnificent, joyful Ben, was alone on that rotten wood. I felt the immense, unbearable weight of 30 years of silent self-blame lift from my shoulders, only to be instantly replaced by the searing pain of this new, shared guilt. William had carried this alone, this absolute anchor of self-condemnation, and let me believe my own actions were the cause. "I couldn't tell you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You were so destroyed. I saw the way you broke, the way you retreated. I knew the truth would not only destroy you, but it would destroy your memory of me. I couldn't bear to lose you both in the same moment." The screen showed him wiping away a torrent of silent tears. So I ran too. I ran, not from the land, but from the truth. And my penance became this ranch. Every life saved, every veteran housed, every child taught to swim safely in that lake. It was a desperate, failed attempt to pay for my 45 minutes of distraction. He then transitioned, his voice becoming firmer, professional. I have established the Stone Creek Sanctuary Trust with two primary mandates. One, to ensure the land can never be sold for profit, especially not for mining. The environment must be protected as fiercely as the residents. Two, to offer a path for the Sinclair family to finally heal by choosing purpose over pain. He spoke of the legacy proposals, the letters, the meticulous legal structure. I didn't leave you a fortune, Genevieve. I left you an obligation. The obligation to love and to serve. That is the only inheritance I believe has true value. The screen faded to black. I sat motionless, the cold of the bench now radiating into a bone-deep tremor. The 30 years of agonizing pain were a lie. My husband was a liar, and yet the lie was fueled by a self-sacrificing love so profound it had cost him his own peace and ultimately his life. I felt a confusing, volcanic mix of furious resentment and overwhelming, heartbroken pity. I heard the crunch of gravel. Reese and Audrey were walking toward me, having heard my earlier cry. Audrey knelt beside me, her corporate armor momentarily discarded. He told us, she whispered, her voice husky. He filmed separate messages. He told us about the money, about the guilt, about Ben. Reese simply sat down and stared at the lake, his shoulders slumped. The siblings, the practical financier, the ethical lawyer, and the sensitive artist were united finally, not by their shared inheritance, but by their father's shared terrible secret. The wound was ripped open, but for the first time we were bleeding together on the site of the injury. We gathered in William's office the next morning. The air was heavy, not with morning dew, but with the lingering emotional fallout from William's confession. Alara and Sierra, her assistant, stood respectfully by the desk, ready to distribute the final sealed envelopes. Grant was already on the phone, his voice a low, furious growl to his lawyer. Yes, I know about the trust, but there has to be a fiduciary loophole. $3 million, $3 million diverted? This is a clear case of undue influence and potentially criminal mismanagement of family assets. Stop, Grant, I commanded, my voice flat, holding up my hand. We have the legacy proposals now. Let's hear William's final words before we destroy his life's work for an extra $6 million. $6 million each. Sierra handed us 4 identical, heavy cream-colored envelopes, each sealed with a wax impression of the ranch's cattle brand. Grant tore his open immediately, his eyes scanning the contents like an auditor hunting for an error. He laughed, a short, bitter, strangled sound. Unbelievable, he muttered. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. What did it say, Grant? Audrey asked, her fingers carefully sliding beneath the flap of her own envelope, preserving it as potential evidence. He wants me to abandon my thriving investment firm in Denver, Grant spat out, crushing the proposal in his fist. He wants me to relocate my satellite office to Billings and use my business acumen to establish sustainable revenue streams for the ranch. He even outlined expansion opportunities for ecotourism and therapeutic retreat services that could benefit the community and provide professional fulfillment. Grant slammed his hand on the desk. Fulfillment? I am fulfilled. I built my success on my own terms, not on his secret penance project. He's offering matching funds from the trust for any investment I make here. A partnership, he calls it. This is emotional manipulation from beyond the grave. Audrey looked up, an expression of profound confusion crossing her sharp features. Mine is equally intrusive. He suggests I establish a nonprofit law practice specializing in veterans benefits, immigrant rights, and domestic violence protection, all issues affecting ranch residents. He's arranged for mentorship with a firm in Billings and connections to advocacy groups. Her voice softened, a crack appearing in the corporate facade. He writes that my passion for justice has always outweighed my desire for corporate success, even when you couldn't admit it to yourself. How did he see that, Mom? I just made partner at a prestigious firm. I turned to Reese, who had accepted his envelope with the quiet reverence of a churchgoer, but still hadn't opened it. Reese, what about you? Reese looked up, his pale blue eyes holding a clarity I hadn't seen since before Ben's death. I don't need to read it, Mom. I already know. Know what? Grant demanded, his disbelief palpable. That Dad saw me clearly when the rest of our family only saw my failures, Reese stated, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic solid conviction. He knew why I kept falling apart in the structured world you all navigated so easily. It has to be something with the horses. Something that uses my empathy rather than treating it as a weakness. Alara nodded slightly, confirming Reese's intuition without revealing specifics. Finally, I opened mine. The first page was titled, For Genevieve, Community Historian and Heartkeeper, My Beloved Wife. The question now is, what happens next? I've established legal protections for this community, ensuring it can continue without us, but it would thrive with Sinclair family involvement, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The choice to transform our family's greatest tragedy into its most meaningful legacy. For you, my beloved wife, I propose the role you were always meant for. Your gift as a history teacher, your ability to help others connect to the past while building toward the future. These talents are desperately needed here. The children need to understand where they came from. The veterans need their stories preserved with dignity, and Ben's memory needs to be woven throughout, not as a ghost that haunts, but as the foundation that supports. Should you accept? The trust provides a modest salary and living quarters, our old home, restored to comfort. More importantly, it offers purpose for your retirement years and healing for your heart. All I ask is that you consider the possibility that in running from this land for 30 years, you may have been running from your own healing. My vision blurred with tears. William hadn't just proposed a job. He had validated my life's work and my lifelong grief in a single, perfectly worded request. Grant began pacing the small office, agitated. He's leveraging guilt and sentimentality. Classic Dad, making emotional appeals seem like rational choices. He expects us to abandon our existing lives to continue his secret project. He doesn't expect anything, I corrected gently. He's offering possibilities. Fulfillment we haven't found in the lives we've built. Reese rounded on Grant, the sensitive brother suddenly radiating fierce authority. Are you fulfilled, Grant? Is that why you work 70 hours a week? Why you've been divorced twice? Why your son barely speaks to you? That's enough, I interjected, stepping between my sons. William gave us choices, not mandates. We each decide for ourselves. Now, Grant, you can take your proposal and return to Denver. Audrey, you can take yours and consult your partners. Reese and I will stay for 1 week. We need to walk this land, read the letters, and understand the cost of what we are deciding to destroy. The tension was almost unbearable. Reese, tucking his unopened envelope securely into his pocket, gave me a look of pure, unadulterated hope. For what it's worth, Mom, Reese said, pausing at the door. I'm staying. I found something here I've been searching for my whole adult life. The next 7 days were an emotional pilgrimage, a relentless dive into William's secret world that felt both exhausting and intensely restorative. Grant returned to Denver, promising to review the trust's financial structure and find the loopholes. Audrey, however, took a 2-week leave from her law firm. The practical woman was utterly captivated by the ethical labyrinth William had constructed. I devoted my time to reading William's letters, moving chronologically through the years, watching the community unfold through his words. It was like reading a real-time historical document of my own marriage's disintegration and the simultaneous birth of the sanctuary. In year 3, he wrote about the installation of the solar panels, meticulously detailing the cost. $19,000, saved from his medical partnership bonuses. In year 6, he wrote about the arrival of the first family seeking refuge from domestic violence and the desperate late-night phone call he made to a pro bono lawyer in Billings. I walked the grounds with Alara, seeing William's love made manifest in timber and stone. The schoolhouse was perhaps the most moving structure. Children who struggled with traditional education thrive here under individualized attention, Alara explained. William set it up to honor Ben's struggles. Ben was always sensitive, needing more than a standardized curriculum could offer. The small desks, the books, the colorful hand-drawn maps. Each detail was a silent rebuke to my own long-held belief that William had moved on from Ben's needs. The workshop was humming with activity. Veterans, including Mr. Hayes, were crafting stunning furniture. It generates income for the ranch and provides purpose, Alara said. William understood that the greatest trauma is often the loss of dignity and the loss of purpose. The medical clinic, staffed by volunteer doctors from Billings, was perhaps the most direct link to William's professional life. He had used his vast network to establish a rotating schedule, ensuring residents received excellent care, all while convincing me he was spending his weekends on the golf course with colleagues. The depth of the deception was astounding, but it was the therapeutic writing center that held the most powerful draw for me. Reese was a natural. He was working with Echo, the traumatized mare, using soft commands and body language. The horse, which had initially been violently skittish, now followed Reese like a shadow. I watched him spend 3 hours patiently brushing the mare, simply existing in her space until her defenses dropped. He's a true horse whisperer. Mrs. Sinclair, the lead riding instructor, a woman named Dara, told me. He has an innate ability to connect with animals who have endured trauma. He's found his calling, right here. I felt a profound, bittersweet pang. William had seen this potential in Reese decades ago, and had created the exact environment where he could thrive. I, his mother, had tried to push him into a world of finance and structured careers, convinced that stability was the cure for his restlessness. William knew better. He knew purpose was the cure. The swimming program, however, remained the most potent emotional trigger. It was my daily ritual. Every afternoon, I sat on Ben's bench, watching instructors methodically teach water safety. Alara told me they meticulously recorded every child who completed the course. We just passed the 47th child, Genevieve, Alara said one afternoon, joining me. 47 lives potentially saved from Ben's fate. That was William's daily penance. I realized then the insidious nature of my own grief. I had run from this place for 30 years, refusing to speak Ben's name, flinching whenever Montana was mentioned. I had kept Ben dead in a shrine of silence. William, through his lie, had kept Ben alive, transforming his tragedy into a force for life. I need to read the letters related to the final structure of the trust, I told Alara. The ones written just before his death. I need to understand why he chose to die with this secret, why he didn't give me this chance while he was alive. Fear is a powerful fortress, Genevieve, Alara replied, gently rubbing the worn wood of her cane. Once a secret has protected you for 30 years, breaking it feels like self-destruction. He didn't want to witness your pain. That night, I opened the final bundles. The letters were shorter, the handwriting shaky, and the underlying tone was one of acceptance and deep, aching loneliness. The truth was waiting for me. I discovered the key letter in the bundle labeled Year 27, The Quiet Heart. William had only 3 years left to live when he wrote it. The topic was Alara and her grandson Jude, the boy who reminded William so fiercely of Ben. Dearest Ellie, I've just returned from the 4th of July celebration. The fireworks were magnificent. But I was watching Alara's grandson Jude, who is now 10, Ben's age when we left. Jude was helping the younger children with sparklers, so careful, so protective. Alara said he has a kind of soul connection with the vulnerable. He reminded me so much of Ben with Reese and Audrey. And I watched them, Genevieve, and I wondered, will you ever meet Jude? Will you ever see what I see? Ben's spirit, living on in this community? His essence made manifest through service? But then I had the worst thought, the one that suffocates me every time. All of this sanctuary, this beautiful, thriving testament to Ben's life, it is all hollow without you. Success feels utterly meaningless without you to share it. Saving strangers cannot compensate for the distance growing between me and my own family. That is my greatest regret, Genevieve. Building all of this without you. The fear of your pain eclipsed my need for your partnership. I chose to be a solitary hero when I should have been a heartbroken husband. I pray that when you read this, the time for healing will finally be upon you. I finished the letter and let the silence of the old ranch house swallow me whole. The confession wasn't the deception about the money or the ranch. The final agonizing confession was about the loneliness of his chosen path. He had sacrificed companionship for what he believed was protection, and in the end, he lost both. I realized then that my own 30 years of grief had been just as selfish. I had refused to look at the loss because it hurt too much, effectively refusing William the chance to confess, to share his burden, to heal together. My avoidance had been his justification. The next day, I found Alara working in the greenhouse. The air was thick with the scent of fertile earth and blooming basil. He told me once that the loneliness was the cost of the miracle, Alara said, sensing my turmoil. But he never regretted building it. He only regretted not having you by his side. Why did he leave us all those letters, Alara? I asked, looking at my hands, which were now permanently stained with the Montana dirt from days of walking the sanctuary grounds. Why not just the video? Because the letters were his invitation. The video was his confession. He wanted you to understand the evolution of his healing, not just the dramatic climax of his guilt. He left you a roadmap to his heart, Genevieve. To the man he was forced to become. The answer felt complete. William had used the art of chronicling, the historian's craft, to finally connect with me, the history teacher. I spent the afternoon watching Reese. He was in the stables, grooming Echo, the formerly skittish mare. Audrey joined me, holding a thick binder of legal documents. Grant called, Audrey said, her voice tight. He's furious. He said the $25 million mining offer is being withdrawn due to the lack of a quick resolution. He views this entire week as a colossal financial mistake. And you, Audrey, do you view it as a mistake? I challenged her gently. She closed the binder, the sound sharp in the quiet air. The proposals are surprisingly practical, Mom. William researched the legal barriers to what he suggested for me. He included contact information for organizations already interested in partnership. He knew me better than I thought. I've achieved everything I ever wanted in Denver, Mom, but I haven't been happy. Her words echoed the painful realization that had just hit me. We had all built lives based on stability, success, and control, desperately trying to outrun the chaos of Ben's death. William was the only one who had embraced the chaos and transformed it into meaning. I've made my decision. Audrey, I said finally, looking across the valley at the thriving community. Audrey didn't look surprised. I thought you might have. You have William's look now. The one he got right before he announced a monumental, life-changing plan. I'm staying, I said, the words bringing an immediate, startling lightness to my chest. Not visiting, not observing, staying, making this place my home. I'm accepting the role of community historian and heartkeeper. Audrey smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that lit up her entire face. Then the mining company offer is dead. The offer was never alive, Audrey, I corrected. It was a ghost of a transaction. The real life is here. The next morning, I gathered my 3 children in William's office for the final family meeting. Audrey had just returned from a consultation in Billings. Grant had flown in from Denver, his expression guarded, his suit looking painfully out of place amidst the ranch's rugged simplicity. Reese was the last to arrive, horsehair clinging to his jeans, radiating a quiet, unshakable confidence I hadn't seen since he was a small boy. I've made my decision, I announced before anyone could speak. I'm moving to the ranch permanently. I will be taking the position William outlined for me, community historian and heartkeeper. I'll be weaving Ben's story into the future of this community. Grant's face tightened. Mom, you can't be serious. What about your friends, your home, your entire established life? I've spent 30 years running from this place, I replied, standing my ground. Refusing to speak Ben's name, keeping his room like a museum. None of it brought healing. This place saved lives, created purpose, and honored our son. I'm not asking any of you to follow my choice, but I do ask that you respect it. I've decided to, Reese interjected, excitement barely contained. He finally tore open his envelope, a gesture of absolute commitment. I'm accepting Dad's proposal. Equine Therapy Program Director. I'll be working with veterans and children, using horses as therapeutic partners. I've already given notice on my apartment and my job. Nothing there was permanent anyway. Grant looked betrayed, turning to Audrey for backup. Audrey? I prompted, my daughter straightening her spine. Lawyer mode engaging, she said, a small, knowing smile on her lips. I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence from the firm. A sabbatical to establish the legal aid clinic Dad proposed. I've already contacted Mr. Hayes. After that, she shrugged, a rare gesture of uncertainty from my always decisive daughter. We'll see. But the firm knows I won't be returning to the partnership track. All eyes turned to Grant, who stood with arms crossed defensively. He was now the sole voice of resistance, the embodiment of the comfortable, secure life we had all fled from. I cannot uproot my family for this fantasy, he stated, his voice tight. My business is in Denver. My children are in schools they love. My wife has her own career. No one's asking you to uproot anything, Grant, I said gently. William's proposal for you involved occasional consultation, strategic planning and presence, not residence. And as for the $25 million from the mining company, that offer is now dead. We are not selling the land. Grant looked around at our faces, his mother and siblings, united in a vision he couldn't yet share. His practical son, struggling to reconcile emotional value with financial reality. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he muttered, shaking his head. Dad created some fantasy world here that's sucking us in one by one. Or perhaps, he added, his voice laced with sudden, reluctant insight. He saw what we couldn't. He saw the rot under the surface of our success. I need time, he finally conceded. I need to go home, talk to my wife, and see if I can even reconcile any of this with my real life. Take all the time you need, Grant, I assured him. This place isn't going anywhere, and neither are we. As he walked out, Audrey watched him go. He'll be back, she predicted. He's too much like Dad not to be fascinated by the numbers. He just needs to see the ROI in human capital, not financial. I knew she was right. William had never given up on Grant, just as he had never given up on the ranch. He simply laid the trap, knowing his children would eventually follow the deepest desires of their own hearts, desires he had seen and validated from beyond the grave. Grant left for Denver hours later, his departure marked by the roar of his high-end SUV, a final metallic protest against the quiet wisdom of the valley. Audrey, however, stayed. She immediately set up a temporary office in the main house, her intense, focused energy now directed entirely toward humanitarian law. I watched her that afternoon, deeply engrossed in a complex immigration case for one of the resident families. Her initial cynicism had evaporated, replaced by the burning sense of purpose William had predicted. She was applying her formidable intellect to save lives, not to maximize corporate mergers. It's exhilarating, Mom, she admitted during a late dinner of pot roast made by Alara. The stakes are real. A mistake here doesn't just lose a client millions. It separates a child from its mother. I've never felt this alive. Reese was thriving, utterly transformed. The restlessness that had defined him seemed to have evaporated into the Montana air. He was a natural leader in the stables, his gentle, confident manner earning the immediate respect of both the veterans and the traumatized horses. His connection with Echo deepened daily, a powerful, non-verbal testament to his own healing. He found his equilibrium, Ilara observed as we watched Reese conduct a therapy session with a young girl who had stopped speaking after witnessing a violent event. He doesn't need the structure anymore, Genevieve. He needs the space. I, too, was finding my equilibrium. My daily ritual was no longer avoidance. It was integration. I spent my mornings on Ben's bench, reading William's letters, absorbing the evolution of the sanctuary. My afternoons were spent with Sierra, helping to document the community's history, interviewing the residents, and weaving their stories into a cohesive narrative. I realized that William's lie had forced him to commute between two worlds for 30 years. The world of comfortable, Affluent pretense in Denver and the world of desperate, profound truth here in Montana. He managed to maintain both. Perhaps such a balance is possible for all of you, Alara suggested quietly, echoing the profound message I had absorbed from William's life. The balance was about recognizing that the real life wasn't just the one in Denver with the successful businesses and good schools. The real life was the one where human connection and purpose superseded financial gain. I called Grant that evening. He was in his office, his voice strained. "The financial reality is brutal, Mom," he confessed. "The trust is solvent, but barely. We've lost the $25 million from the mining company. I don't see how this sanctuary can be sustainable without that kind of capital. William kept it going for 30 years without it, Grant. He found a way. He created impact in both worlds. Maybe you can too." "I don't know the first thing about ecotourism," he admitted, a rare note of self-doubt entering his voice. "My specialty is leveraged buyouts, not llama trekking." "Then learn," I challenged him. "William left you a partnership, Grant, not a mandate. He believed your talent for strategic planning was crucial to the sanctuary's survival. He gave you the chance to apply your genius to something that won't just enrich your portfolio, but your soul." I could feel him wrestling with the implications. The pragmatic Grant saw the challenge. The wounded son saw the invitation. "I'll fly out next week," he finally agreed, his voice heavy with resignation and curiosity, "but only for a three-day consultation. I need to run the numbers on this eco-tourism fantasy." "That's all William ever asked," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. A consultation. A chance. As I hung up, I looked out the window. The memorial bell was ringing softly, signaling the start of the community dinner. I could see Reese and Jude laughing by the stables, Audrey deep in conversation with Mr. Hayes, and the daily life of the sanctuary continuing, unperturbed by the storm of our family drama. For the first time since Ben's death, I allowed myself to wonder if the great tragedy hadn't broken us, but rather broken us open. The next visit by Grant was markedly different. He arrived not in his sharp business suit, but in chinos and a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt, a concession to the ranch environment. He spent 3 full days not in William's office, but walking the perimeter with Alara and the foreman, meticulously documenting infrastructure, identifying potential revenue streams, and, to my utter astonishment, actually asking questions about the residents. The therapeutic value of the equine program is quantifiable. "Reese," Grant admitted one evening, poring over budget sheets, "and the demand for bespoke, veteran-crafted furniture is higher than I anticipated. But the scale is all wrong. We need to leverage the land itself." He saw the land as an asset, but now he saw it as an asset with a soul. He outlined a proposal to convert the secluded South acreage into a high-end therapeutic retreat center, exactly what William had suggested in his proposal. "It generates revenue to fund the non-profit side," Grant explained, stabbing a finger at a spreadsheet. "It allows us to be self-sufficient, Mom, and it's a hell of an investment." It was William's vision, filtered through Grant's high-powered financial lens. He hadn't rejected his father's legacy. He had metabolized it and made it his own. Audrey, meanwhile, was fighting a complex battle in Billings, using the ranch's resources to support a resident's asylum case. She was consumed, passionate, utterly in her element. She had found a purpose that dwarfed the ambition of her old corporate life. I found her late one evening, exhausted but triumphant, in her makeshift office. "I won the case, Mom. The family gets to stay. I used a loophole I learned in the 3rd year of law school, one that has absolutely zero use in mergers and acquisitions. I called my senior partner in Denver. I told him I wouldn't be coming back." She looked at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I realized that William didn't just leave me a job. He left me a path to integrity. I have built something here that matters." Our family was converging, not geographically, but spiritually. We were all working toward the same goal, using the gifts William had cultivated in us, the historian's passion, the lawyer's integrity, the financier's strategy, and the empath's healing touch, to secure his vision. I finally understood the impossible mathematics of grace. The four of us, broken by one tragedy, were being woven together by one purpose. Weeks passed, turning into months. The ranch settled into its rhythm. Reese became a local legend, his work with the horses and the veterans drawing attention from surrounding counties. Audrey established her legal clinic, Stone Creek Advocacy, which quickly became indispensable to the community and a source of pride for the entire sanctuary. Grant, while still residing in Denver, dedicated 1 full week a month to the ranch, becoming the relentless, sharp-witted engine of its financial sustainability. He was working 70 hours a week again, but now his work was saving a nonprofit, not just enriching his portfolio, but his soul. He was finding the fulfillment his father had promised him. My own role as the community historian became the emotional anchor. I spent hours with Sam, helping him tell his stories about Mr. William, collecting the narratives of the veterans, the families, and the children. I was weaving Ben's spirit into every story, ensuring his life was the foundation, not the wound. I was finally able to speak Ben's name without flinching. The great deception, William's 30-year lie, was no longer a betrayal. It was the price of our collective salvation. He was too afraid to ask us to join him, so he built the lifeboat and waited for us to find it on our own. On a crisp autumn afternoon, I stood with Alara, looking out at the valley. The sanctuary was thriving. He never stopped loving you, Genevieve, Alara said, adjusting her cane. He just didn't know how to show you a love that wasn't perfect. I know, I replied, watching Grant lead a group of prospective investors through the new retreat center plans. And now I can finally show him a love that isn't perfect, but is honest. The climax of our healing came on the first anniversary of William's death. The community, led by Alara and Mr. Hayes, decided to inaugurate the Founders Wall inside the newly expanded communal dining hall, the barn. I stood with my children, Reese, Audrey, and Grant, as the white sheet was pulled away. There were 3 portraits side by side, arranged chronologically. 1, a photo of a 10-year-old boy with a gap-toothed grin and a fishing hat, Benjamin Sinclair. 2, a portrait of William, his eyes alight with determined, quiet purpose, William Sinclair. 3, a photo I insisted upon, showing the 4 of us, myself, Reese, Audrey, and Grant, standing shoulder to shoulder on Ben's bench, our faces weathered but whole, the Sinclair family legacy. Mr. Hayes, the first veteran William saved, spoke first. These are the founders, one through his tragic absence, the other through his determined presence, and the rest through their courageous choice to honor the cost of the miracle. I stepped forward, my voice strong, no longer brittle. I spent 30 years running from the place that took my son. William spent 30 years building a world that honored him. The truth is, the only way past grief is through it, not around it, but straight through its heart to find meaning on the other side. I looked at my children, all now fully integrated into William's vision, using their incredible talents to fuel his purpose. We found our way home, Ben, I whispered, touching his image gently. All of us, finally. The deception was gone. The money was a means, not an end. The family was whole. This is the impossible mathematics of grace. My husband's 30-year lie cost him his life, but gained our family salvation. We learned that the weight of silence is always heavier than the pain of truth. If you're carrying a secret burden, a guilt, a failure, a loss, remember that your greatest trauma can become your greatest legacy. Don't let the fear of exposure paralyze your purpose. We chose to turn $25 million, $25 million, into $25 million. Moments of healing. What choice will you make today? Comment below, and if this story moved you to forgive the deception in your own life, please subscribe and share this channel to help us build a community of healing.